All right, thank you, Jackie, and good morning, everybody. I hope you're healthy and well, and thank you so much for joining this exciting webinar. Today's topic is getting started with eBird, and I have the great pleasure of introducing Amanda Bichel. Amanda is the Ontario Important Bird and Biodiversity Area Coordinator for Birds Canada, and I love her bio. In her role, Amanda is lucky to work with enthusiastic, dedicated volunteers to monitor important bird areas for priority species, carry out conservation activities, organize events, and increase awareness of her program. Amanda has a background in environmental sciences and biology and has worked with birds, bats, soil, and water. Amanda says that connecting people with nature is what motivates her to work in conservation. And Amanda hopes to give the next generation the same or even better opportunities to experience the beauty of nature that she's enjoyed. So Amanda, what a beautiful gift to the next generation. I'll tell you that Amanda has also previously supported Bruce Trail Conservancy through collaborative bird identification hikes with our citizen science volunteers. So welcome and thank you, Amanda, and over to you.
All right, well, thank you, Michael, for that introduction. Yeah, I echo the same things as Michael. I hope everyone's doing really well in this crazy situation. It's kind of unprecedented, but it gets us to do lots of cool webinars and things like that. So I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for having me. So I just want to get started by kind of answering a positive question, and there was a whole bunch of questions sent to me before, and so I'll kind of be peppering those throughout the presentation. So the first question is, someone asked, are we seeing more diversity and healthier bird populations or sightings since the onset of COVID-19 restrictions? And I'm not sure about that, and sometimes scientific studies will definitely have to be done in order to determine that. But what we have seen is more people feeding birds and watching them from their homes, listening to them in the quieted streets. So it's kind of a silver lining to this whole COVID thing. And there's two articles that I'd like to share with you in the chat box. I can share them at the end of the presentation. And they're just two quick kind of positive articles about birds in this time. So I hope you'll enjoy those. So a little bit about me. As Michael said, I am the Ontario IBA, Important Bird and Biodiversity Area Coordinator for Ontario, but also I do some national work as well. I really love data, so Fitbit data and eBird data and IBA data, I love it all. So that's what makes me really excited to give these kinds of presentations. And so I'm not going to do a whole outline of the presentation or anything, but by the end of this presentation, I hope that I give you the tools anyways to be able to explore eBird, submit your own checklist to start your life list if you haven't already. And I hope you love eBird as much as I do by the end of this. So I'm going to start with a little bit of introduction to Birds Canada. So I'm lucky enough to work normally out of this office. The building on the right is our new building-ish, new-ish. It's our headquarters in Port Rowan, and it's right on Lake Erie, which is really lucky. And so a little bit about Birds Canada. We're a non-for-profit, non-governmental charity, and our mission is to conserve wild birds through sound science, on-the-ground actions, innovative partnerships, public engagement, and science-based advocacy. And some of you might actually recognize that photo. That was at one of the Dundas Valley hikes, so thanks for coming out to that. Birds Canada, or what is now Birds Canada, started out as the Long Point Bird Observatory in 1960, which is now the oldest bird observatory in the Western Hemisphere. And in 2017, they actually banded their millionth bird, which was super exciting. It was a Tennessee warbler. So in the 90s, we became Bird Studies Canada, and it kind of expanded our role to engage citizen scientists in bird conservation. And recently, we updated our logo, website, and our name to Birds Canada to even better highlight the outreach, engagement, and education work that we do. And this is kind of a little preview of the website. If you haven't checked it out already, you should. It's a great website. So now Birds Canada has 50 to 75 staff members, depending on what season it is. Obviously, we have more usually in the spring and summer. And we run 40 citizen science programs, including Christmas bird count, eBird, great backyard bird count, feeder watch, species at risk programs, and breeding bird atlases all throughout Canada. And through those and more programs, we engage over 50,000 volunteers across Canada. So yeah, there's programs for everyone, from beginner birders to advanced birders. So it's really a great organization. So if I was in person, I would ask, who here likes to watch or listen to birds? And I'm assuming most of you would put your hand up because you're, you know, stewards of Bruce, part of the Bruce Trail. But you would be 1 in 5 Canadians who watches or listens to birds. Birds are a huge part of our landscape and the ecosystem, and they're one of the best indicators of ecosystem health and biodiversity. So probably as environmental stewards, I don't have to work very hard to convince you to care about birds, but I'll just give a little, you know, some benefits that birds bring to us. So they work to distribute seeds and pollinate plants like the hummingbirds. They control pests. They also have value for other species as food and as habitat creators. So think of woodpeckers and the holes that they leave in trees. And then birds like the bald eagle also have important spiritual and cultural significance. And of course, millions of people simply enjoy listening to and seeing birds. And in a recent Canadian nature survey, bird watchers spent an average of 133 days a year birding. And then another survey in the US in 2016 said that bird watchers spent an estimated $39 billion on travel and equipment and bird seeds. So there's an obvious economic benefit that birds bring us as well. So this is like one of my favorite graphs to show why we do what we do. And it's from the State of Canada, Canada's Birds Report that came out in 2019. And it really highlights what we do kind of from, you know, a positive and a negative aspect. So positively, there's some great recovery examples. So raptors and waterfowl are really good examples of what can happen if people come together and science informs decision and policy, and everyone works together. So raptors really benefited from DDT restrictions, and then waterfowl really benefited from hunting restrictions and wetland preservation. So then from the not so positive part, there's also a lot of species in decline in Canada, and those include shorebirds, grassland birds, and aerial insectivores for various reasons. And so why we do what we do is that these species globally and here in Canada do need a voice. So we and our volunteers try to be that voice. So one question I got beforehand was, what plants can I use in my garden to help birds? So this is all from our website, these 6 best ways to help birds. The website suggests to plant native vegetation that provides cover and food for birds like sunflowers and thistles. If you want to attract hummingbirds, tubular plants, nectar producing and flowering plants are very good. And then fruiting trees such as mountain ash and serviceberry attract berry-eating birds like bluebirds, robins, and waxwings. And then many sparrow species enjoy native prairie grasses. And then another thing you can do to attract more birds or reduce harm to birds is eliminate the use of pesticides on your property. So check out our website. There's even more ways that you can help birds, more detail on these 6 points here. So I'm just going to talk a bit about the Important Bird and Biodiversity Areas program. because that's what I work on. So IBAs are a suite of sites designated for large groups of birds or species at risk. And our main goal is to identify those sites, monitor them for population trends and changes, and conserve them whenever possible. It's a global program, so all the green dots are terrestrial sites, and all of the blue dots are marine sites. Yeah, there and there. And there's over 12,000 sites around the world, and most partners or most countries are partners in this program. And BirdLife International is the lead organization for this program. These are all the IBAs in Canada. They're just points, but there's around 600 of them and around 65 of them in Ontario. And these sites are mainly coastal sites or interior wetland sites, as you can kind of see on this map. There are also a few inland forest sites that are really important for species at risk. So that's kind of what makes up Canada IBAs. And then I thought, here's a quick map that I would show them of IBAs that overlap with the Bruce Trail. So there's one up in the right that's right on the Bruce Peninsula. And then if we zoom in a bit more to kind of the southeast corner of Ontario, there's the Dundas Valley and 12 Mile Creek IBAs. And they're known for some breeding bird species at risk, including the Louisiana water thrush and Acadian flycatcher. And then there's Beamer Conservation Area, which is known for its huge numbers of hawks during migration. And then there's the Niagara River Corridor that's known for its vast diversity of gulls and waterfowl. And Bonaparte's gull is one that really highlights that. And then one that's kind of not on the map, I should have put it, but the west end of Lake Ontario, it goes from kind of Niagara on the Lake all the way up to Port Credit. And that's known for huge numbers of waterfowl in the fall and winter as well. And most IBAs have habitat that is important for other species as well. So that's why they often overlap with conservation areas, provincial parks, and other organizations like the Bruce Trail. So I just want to talk for a minute about our link, or the link with eBird that the IBA program has. So one second. I'll just tell you a little bit about the IBA protocol that's on eBird. So there's some limitations when you submit just an individual checklist, and that if you want to get all the data for the IBA, there's really no way to reliably combine multiple checklists in one day. So what the IBA protocol does is it sets out a way that there can be a coordinated effort of multiple volunteers going out on the same day, kind of at the same time, at different spots in the IBA. And the IBA protocol combines those checklists so that we can get a better picture overall of what's happening in the IBA over the years. So this is the west end of Lake Ontario IBA that I had mentioned, and all those yellow dots are spots that have been monitored, not necessarily every single time. And then these are sections of the lake that we split up for volunteers. So we try to cover as much as we can, and it just gives us a better picture of what, how many birds are there altogether. So let's get into the eBird part of the presentation. So very broadly, eBird is a program that allows you to do two really important things. You can keep a life list of birds, and you can explore data. So I will definitely go through more detail those, but for your life list, it can include your list of species, photos, sounds, videos, and then for exploring, you can explore from local spots to spots all around the world. So I've highlighted on the top here that the site that we should be using is eBird Canada. So this is www.ebird.ca. So this is called a regional portal, and Canada was one of the first regional portals made. Now many countries have them. But using eBird Canada links you to the site that is managed by local partners, which is Birds Canada, and it provides local information like news articles and statistics specific to Canada, like you can see in the picture there. And then this regional portal also ensures that there are local reviewers looking over the data. So if there's something out of the ordinary, they make sure, they contact people and they make sure that the data quality is high. So eBird is run by the Cornell Lab, who also created the Merlin birding app. So another question that someone sent in was, what are the best free birding apps? And Merlin is definitely it, in my opinion. You can browse species, and you can also use this really great ID tool. So you just answer a few questions, and it can narrow the species down that it thinks that you've seen in your location at that time of the year. So it's really helpful if you're just beginning to learn. It also has range maps, bird songs, and information on each species. So I'm also showing the eBird app on the left-hand side. So if you are comfortable using apps, then after this presentation, you can go and start checking that out as well. You can just submit your data as you're basically seeing the birds from the field, so it can save some time. And then I'm going to answer another question on this slide. Someone asked about a referee whistle and what bird that could be. So I can only guess that it is a red-winged blackbird. So I'll show you it using the Merlin app. So I can't see my screen, but this is what the app looks like. And I'm going to play the sound. So hopefully the person who asked that now knows that they have a red-winged blackbird wherever they saw it. All right, so a bit about eBird before I jump into the demo. It started in 2002 and was launched worldwide in 2010. As of 2016 in November, over 330,000 unique users have submitted over 100 million checklists from more than 250 countries. So this means data on over 10,000 species, which is pretty amazing. As of June 2018, over 500 million bird observations have been made. But by the end of this year, they're thinking that it'll hit 1 billion. So this just goes to show how much eBird is growing in popularity over the last few years. And maybe COVID will help that as well. Also, for some Canadian numbers, there were over 17,000 eBird participants in Canada in 2019, and that was up by around 3,300 participants from 2018. And then I didn't write this in, but people in Canada in 2019 spent almost 900,000 hours birding, which is an increase of 100,000 hours from 2018. So I just wanted to highlight how popular eBird is getting and how many people use it. And then this just kind of goes to show also that yes, eBird is definitely on its way to 1 billion observations, because at the end of April, they hit 800,000, which is really great. And you can help get there. How cool would it be if one of you got the billionth bird? That would be awesome. So first off, I just want to say that I know some of you may be intimidated by eBird, or you think the data you collect isn't as useful as people who are professional birders or who are in the field all the time or who are experts, but I'm here telling you that it's not true. All the data that is submitted to eBird are important, and even the common species in your backyard can be useful for some kind of project, and it all contributes to science. So however small the effort or however boring the bird you think it might be, you really are contributing to science. So here are some of the ways that your data may get used. Status and trend maps are a new-ish project on eBird, and I'll show you one on the next slide for the beautiful Canada warbler that's in this picture. And data are also used for conservation actions and other decision-making. And in many, many peer-reviewed papers, there's actually a list on eBird that you can see. You can also download your own large sets of data if you have a project in mind, because it's all publicly accessible. So your observations really do matter. So this is a weekly abundance estimate from all the information's from eBird, and this is just one of the pieces of information. So it takes the Canada warbler from its wintering grounds up to where it breeds in the southern boreal. So I'll just play that for you now. So you can see they overwinter in Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, I think. They kind of concentrate in that area, and then they spread out. They migrate and spread out to breed in the southern boreal region. And so if you go to the science tab in eBird, you can get this kind of information and more for most, I'm not sure for most species, but for a lot of species right now. And they're working on updating things all the time. So that's just a good example. All right, so now the meat of the presentation. First, I just wanted to re-emphasize that to get started, you should log into eBird Canada. And if you'll know you're in the right place if you see that eBird Canada in the top left that I just circled there. So to get to my next slide, you will want to either hit sign in or create account, depending on if you've already registered or not. So here is the new registration page. So this is if you've never signed into eBird. There's a list of different projects down the left-hand side there. If you've already registered with those, you don't need to create a new account. So you would just hit sign in. If you've never registered with any of those and you know you don't have an account, then you would register here. If you do have an account, you would just sign in using this page. All right, this is the home page. So once you sign in, this is what it looks like. It shows some stats, quick stats on your eBird observations. So the number of species you've observed, number of checklists you've completed, and so on. But what's really important about this page is the tab at the top, the all important tabs. So we'll always come back here. If you're ever lost on eBird and you don't know where you went, just click eBird Canada and it'll bring you back to this home page, and you can get all of these tabs at the top. Basically, that gets you most places you want to be on eBird. So the next slide is My eBird. So you would start on this page and you would click right here, My eBird. So that brings you to this page, which is a more in-depth look at your species list. So it shows all of the species that you've ever seen. You can break it down by country, state, province, and county. And you can click on this right here and it'll bring up the list and it'll tell you when you've seen every species, the first time, the last time. It's a really great tool. And then there's some tools on the right-hand side here, just more ways to see your data. So summarize my observations. You can pick certain sites or all your sites and summarize them for a certain period of time. Manage my checklist, that's just a long list of your checklists, and I'll show you other options with that later. And then my shared checklist, this is checklists that you have been birding with people and shared them between each other. And then you can see locations, import data, and so on. Then the next slide is profile. So you would go back to that original tab, or you can click right here, your profile. Now this is optional. You don't have to sign up for my profile. It's just another kind of cool way of seeing your data, and other people can see this as well. No, not everyone can see the other stats that I just showed you, but if you create a profile, they can see this. So they can see the map that's laid out here, and the last pictures that you've taken, and the last checklist that you have submitted. So this slide is the explore side. It's just a preview of some of what you can explore with species and region at the top. So if you type in a species, it will bring up photos, maps, audio, and video for the species, all with information from eBird. And for the region, you can type in country, province, or county. So someone asked about what they would use for the Guelph location. And the closest you can kind of get to your location before actually zooming in on a map is by typing in your county. So you would use Wellington County for the Guelph location to just get to the closest area. Also, someone asked, how can we use eBird to locate birds near us? And that is the million-dollar question. And I'm going to tell you that there's so many ways to do that, and that's what I'm about to get into. So thanks for asking that question. All right, so this is the Explore Species map slide. Actually, this is the home slide, but I'm about to press play, and you will see a video showing how you would explore a species map. Okay, so you would go to the tab at the top, Explore Species, and go down here to the species map and click that. Now, if you say you saw an oriole in your backyard and you wanted to see how many, if that's rare, or how many other people have seen that, you would, type in oriole, but then you see that there is a lot of other oriole species. So you want to narrow that down a bit. And from the Merlin app that you just downloaded on your phone, you find that it's a Baltimore oriole. Or you knew that already. So you type in a more specific species, and this is the map that comes up of all the orioles, or all the oriole observations ever on eBird. So you can see the frequency on the right-hand side. The darker purple it is, the more observations have been made. You can also change the map view like you can on most eBird maps. So those are just some of the ways you can change them. And so you can also zoom in. So let's zoom in to Southern Ontario here. And once you get close enough, it shows you all of the observations in that area. So the red ones are all recent sightings, and the blue ones are all older than a month, basically. So I'm gonna type in a more rare species just to kind of filter down how many points are showing, just so you can see a few other functions. So Louisiana water thrush is what I'm typing in, a beautiful warbler. And so there's a lot less observations. So if you zoom out, that's kind of what it looks like. But a handy option is show point sooner. So if you want to kind of see how many there are from a bit further back, you can click that and it'll show the points sooner. And then there's all these options to choose, oops, sorry about that, to choose which years you would like to see and which months. You can narrow it down to a specific year and month, or you can pick all years just for June. So if I wanted to see possibly all the breeding birds, then I would choose, June and July, set the date range, and then that's all of those. So obviously none from this year, so none of them are red. It's all from last year and earlier. And then if you want to see only the ones with pictures or video or audio, you can click this explore rich media only. So then you can zoom into whichever ones you want, click on it, and click on the date, and it'll bring that checklist up with the species picture, species account. So I hope that helps. I don't know, should I open it up for any quick questions, Michael, or should we save those all for the end?
Yeah, traditionally we save them to the end, so we'll you can keep going. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so next I'm going to show a video of exploring hotspots. So of course, go to the tab at the top and explore, and then explore hotspots. And so this is all the hotspots in the world, which is, I mean, that's a lot of information. It's pretty cool. I guess I should say hotspots are spots that have been determined by eBird and you to be kind of spots that people go back to and use instead of making up a new personal location each time. So this won't show all of the personal locations that you've created or other people have created, just the hotspots. But anyways, you can see that the red ones are the more species-rich hotspots, and then the yellow ones are kind of the less, but still 100 to 200 species. So if we zoom into Southern Ontario again, let's zoom into Guelph and click on one of these in a neighborhood in Guelph. So you can see the data that it gives you. It gives you the name, and it gives you the number of species ever seen at that site, and the number of checklists submitted at that site, and then access on the bottom there to more information about the site. And I'll get into some of those later. So if we, oh, and if you want to submit data right from here, if that's how you want to find a hotspot and submit data, that's great too. So we're gonna go view another one. So if you know the name of the hotspot that you visited or that you want to explore, you can just type it in the bar at the top and it will zoom in for you. So now we're gonna view the details of this hotspot. So there's a lot of things on this page. Right now it's on last seen, as you can see right there. So this is when each species was last seen in that site that you chose. So you can scroll down and you can see last seen. And then first seen is when species were first seen at the site. So if you scroll all the way down, it's kind of neat because you can see the first species that was ever seen at the site was a golden-winged warbler in May 1980. That was the first observed or submitted record on eBird. Then you can go to high counts, and you can see that this is the most number for each species that has been recorded. So the highest number of ravens that have been seen at this site is 7. Then you can also go to recent visits there at the top, and that just shows you who has been birding in the hotspot and when, and how many species they've seen. Then you can go to illustrated checklists here, and it will show you all the checklists at that location with photos and with audio recordings. So it could kind of help you if you heard a bird that you have no idea what it is, maybe there's audio recordings for that bird. And then this is kind of like the sorry, can't think of the word. Anyways, this is the top 10 birders in the hotspot. So whoever has seen the most species. You can also change that by checklists and see who has submitted the most checklists. So that's what that is right there. Then at the top, you can also change to see the data for a specific month if you'd like. So say it's June and you want to only see, you're going out tomorrow and you want to see only the species that are seen in June in the site. Then you click June, all years set. So these are 60 species have been seen in June. And you can also change the last seen, first seen for all of those as well. So you can get that information specifically for that. You can also change the years, just last year, what was seen last year, and I think the last 10 years are the options there. So I know that's a lot of information, but I hope that has helped you kind of start seeing where you can explore data in eBird. So this slide is to explore more. So you saw some of the options there that said bar chart. So to get the bar chart, you would go to the top tab again and go explore and bar charts. So this is the screen that pops up, and you can select the province, and you can select either the entire province, counties, hotspots, which we just went over, and important bird areas. And that's what I'm going to select because I like IBAs. So then if I selected an IBA, and then it would give you a list on the bottom of IBAs, and you could select whichever one you wanted. And this is what would pop up for the Dundas Valley and Dundas Marsh IBA. So it's a list of species that have all been seen at the Dundas IBA. And it shows you, it's a really good resource to show you when species show up and when species leave. So you can see Canada goose is kind of around all year, and mute swans, they're kind of around all year as well. And then if we go let's go to the warblers next, just to see kind of a better example of species that come at a certain time and leave. So for example, a blue-winged warbler would come maybe at the end of April, but definitely at the beginning of May, and then probably stay till mid-September. And the thickness of the bars just shows you how the frequency of the sightings at that time. Then there's even more information here in these graphs. So if you click those, you'll get a whole bunch of abundance information and frequency information. I'm not going to go over that in because of time. All right, so next you can explore alerts. So if you want to get an alert of a bird that's super rare in your area that you haven't seen, you can set an alert here. So you can do that, and you can unsubscribe at any time. So if you only want to do it for the spring, let's say, you can do that. And then you can also get year needs. So these are even common species that you haven't seen, but other people have in the area. So you'll get an email daily or whatever you set it as, telling you someone submitted, you know, a record for a prothonotary warbler. That's in the picture. And here's the checklist. Here's kind of where it was. So you can get information specifically for your location in that way. Okay, so here's the last kind of video. It's how to submit a checklist, and I'll try to go as slow as I can through it. Oh yes, there's a question during it. Okay. Okay, so you'd go to the submit bar at the top, of course. If there's one thing you can learn from this is to go back to that tab. And then it'll take you to this page. So that drop-down list is a list of all of the locations you've ever been birding at. So if you've been somewhere and you're going again, you just go to that list and choose where you went that day. No need to look up a new one. Then you can also choose longitude or latitude. You can select an entire city, county, or state, but it's kind of not recommended to do that. We want you to kind of zoom in and get as close as you can to the actual location where you were birding. But sometimes if you're driving around for, you know, 50 kilometers or something, you can't really do that. So to find it on a map, we would enter the county. So I'm going to enter Niagara County and try to go to another place where the Bruce Trail overlaps. And so this here is giving you, these are my personal locations that I've been to, the blue ones. And then these are kind of groups of birding hotspots. So if you click on those, it'll zoom in and open up all the hotspots for that area. So we zoom in, let's say we went to Short Hills, and we want to, if we want to create a new location, we would click and get this green icon, and we would enter a very specific name, you know, like the trail you were walking on, or, you know, South Short Hills Provincial Park, or something like that. For this example, I'm just going to pick a hotspot that's already there and press continue. And now I'm going to put in the date that I went birding. So these right here are observation types. So traveling is if you were walking around a specific distance and your primary objective was birding. And so this is all the information you have to put in. And then for each observation type, it kind of changes the amount of information you need. For stationary, you were just sitting, so you don't need to enter the distance that you walked. For historical, you notice that it's optional to enter some of that data in. So someone asked if they could enter historical information on eBird, if you want to catch up on all your old checklists. And yes, there's this way of doing it, and then on the next slide I'll show you another way. So you can submit checklists individually if you have a notebook, let's say, and if you don't have all that information, you just kind of do the best you can in these fields. And so yes, you can enter historical data into eBird. And then incidental is kind of if you're sitting at your window and a bird flies by, or you're driving in your car and a snowy owl flies past and you want to report it, then that's the one you would use. Other is a whole bunch of different survey types, and for each one it changes the amount and type of information. So we're just going to go with traveling. So we went at 7 a.m. because we're keen birders, and we went for 45 minutes. We walked 2 kilometers, and there were 2 of us in the party. Then in the checklist comments, you can write really whatever you want. This is for your benefit, so you can write the weather, what kind of survey you were doing, something specific that you want to remember. And then we would hit continue. And then on the right side here, you can click to show rarities if you want. So this shows even more species at this site. But for now, I'm just going to leave those off. And this is now a list of species that are common to see at that time at the location that you chose. So it's filtered it down already for you. So you can also jump to species if you don't see it in the list here, if you only have a few, or if that's the way you like to do it. Some people like to do that. But let's start adding some species. So we saw 2 Canada geese, and 4 warblers, 4 warblers on my mind, 4 wood ducks, 2 ruffed grouse, a mourning dove. And then, so I just kind of highlighted this to show that it is in sections right now. You can also up here group by most likely. And so that'll give you 3 sections, I believe, a section on top that's like really likely to see, and then it goes more rare as you scroll down. But I like to look at it in type of bird species. So you can see there's shorebirds and swifts and hummingbirds all kind of sectioned out as you scroll down. So say we want to enter some details. So I saw 1 great blue heron, but I want to put in that it flew over. So you would just click the details, and you would write into the details, it flew over. We saw turkey vultures. And then I'm looking at the owl section, and I don't see, I swear I heard saw-whet owl. So, but it's not there. So that means it's probably rare to see at this site at this time. So you can go to the top right and click add species. So it'll jump to the top. You type in northern saw-whet owl and you click it. And because it's rare, it pops up this box that asks you to give more information on the sighting. So this is for those data quality checkers who are reviewing all the data because they know that this is rare, so they want to make sure that you have more information about it. So you can add information about the bird sighting, like what the bird looks like, if you heard the bird, what the bird sounded like, how many times you heard the bird, where you saw it, up in a tree, on the ground, things like that. So you can be as descriptive as you want in these details. And then you must, when it's rare and it says needs details, you must click the complete button before it allows you to move on or to submit the checklist. So then let's keep going. Oh, I remember that I saw a killdeer. And then I saw 4 downy woodpeckers, and I noticed that a few of them were males and a few of them were females because some had red on their head and some didn't. So I want to add that information in here. So I'm going to go to details and age and sex. So you can put in what age the birds were and what sex they were. And if you don't know one of those pieces of information, you can put them in the other boxes as well. And I also saw them building a nest. So I'm going to look at the breeding codes. And so you can enter in, especially at this time of year, what breeding code you think you saw them at. So you would enter, if you saw 2 at the beginning of your walk and 2 at the end of your walk, you would enter the highest breeding code. So that would be near the top of the list. So you saw them building a nest. So you want to record that information. So then we're just going to keep entering data. We're going to look at these. Oh, and then another important thing to note is if you can't tell the species apart, if you know, for example, you saw an alder and a willow flycatcher, but they didn't make a noise, so you can't really distinguish. They're really hard to tell apart just by looking at them. There's also sections for that. And a downy hairy woodpecker, sometimes it's really hard to tell which one it is, so it gives you that. And another thing is that if you saw, you saw a flycatcher species, but you have no idea what it was, you can put it down here under flycatcher species. So at least it's recorded, but you're not quite sure what it was, so you can't really narrow it down to species. We saw a great crested flycatcher and a blue-headed vireo, and we got a picture of a blue-headed vireo, so we want to add it in. This is kind of new on eBird, but you can't add it in right on the checklist anymore. You have to go to the next slide that says add media, but it's still really simple to add in photos and audio and video if you have imported them onto your computer. All right. Okay, we saw 10 tree swallows, robins, and then, oh, I thought I was done. Song sparrow, an ovenbird, that's nice, and a cardinal. So then at the end of the list, it's going to ask us, are you submitting a complete checklist of all the birds that you were able to identify? Usually we could click yes to this question. If there's, say, a sensitive species that you're leaving off your list, like an owl or something like that, that you don't want people to know right away, then you can answer no. But otherwise, even if you didn't count, say, the number of starlings, you can put an X in that column and then still press yes in this checklist. So usually we want to click yes to that. And it doesn't mean that you ID'd every single bird you heard and saw, but it's just you're IDing everything to your ability. And then we press submit. Oh yes, and there's more information about submitting a complete checklist right if you hover over it. So I'm not actually going to submit this checklist because I wasn't actually there, but you would just click the submit button in the bottom right and it would go to the next slide and say, good, you completed it. Okay, and then the last thing here I'm going to show you is sharing. So this is if you're out in the field with a few people and only one of you wants to keep a checklist and share it later for all 3 of you. So you would go to My eBird from the top, and then you would go to my manage my checklists right here. You would click that. Takes you to this page. It's a list of all your checklists, and you can click share. Find the checklist that you want and click share. And then it brings this up. It brings the whole checklist up, and it brings a list of contacts that you have saved, or this box at the top where you can just enter in their username or email and click share. And that is all I have to show you today. I have 2 more questions. One of them is a really tough question, but what is the rarest bird in Ontario? This is a really tough one because they could be rare because they're at the edge of their range, or they're unfortunately declining in population, or they're migrants that just get blown off a path. But anyways, I hope that I've given you enough tools to kind of see how you could explore what the rarest species around you is in eBird. And then someone asked what is the best birders guide? And I'm also going to share a link with you in the chat about that. But for me personally, the best guide to bring to the field is your phone, because it's easy to carry, it's easy to look at all the birds, it's easy to get the sounds. But for at home, I love the Sibley's guide, but there's other really good ones as well. There's the Peterson's guide and National Geographic guides. It all just depends on how much information you want. If you want all of North America, or just Ontario. So you've just got to find what's right for you. So that is all I have for now. If anyone has questions, I would love to take them.
All right. Well, thank you, Amanda. That was fantastic, and I definitely learned a lot.
Awesome.
There are some questions which I'm going to ask you right now, and so you're in the hot seat. So the first one is, I understand one can enter a bird that they've seen with Merlin and then directly send it over to eBird. Does that go into eBird Canada?
Can you enter birds into Merlin? I don't think so. I mean, if you can, my suggestion would just be to go to eBird Canada and enter them in there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
The next question is one that I had as well, and it's, as eBird becomes more popular, are there concerns about certain bird species being stressed? As an example, someone shares that a barred owl is in a certain place and then dozens of people flock there. So can you talk a little bit about the ethics of birding and how that would work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So eBird has started to make a list of sensitive species. So if you do submit a barred owl, it will, I think it takes it off your checklist for the time. And also, if you're worried about that, you can hide your checklist from the public. So my suggestion would be to hide that checklist from the public until the next breeding season, or a few months down the line, or forever, if you don't want anyone to know that location and for it to be kind of harassed. The other thing is, you can wait to you can wait to upload a checklist as well. So if you want to submit your checklist in a few months after you know the breeding birds are gone, you can do that too. So those are some of the things that, yeah. And then, yeah, I'm pretty sure eBird does something where you can't see sensitive species in other people's checklists.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've got a question here from Chris Barber saying, do you have a recommendation for the best binoculars for beginning bird watching?
Oh, that's good. I just bought a new pair of binoculars because I was using an old pair that I got off Kijiji for a long time, and I finally decided, okay, I need like a real pair of binoculars now, and I'll go get them. Okay, so this is the brand, Vortex, and it's a really good brand. I would suggest looking there for beginner binoculars because there are a good range of a good range of prices and a good range of optics as well. So my suggestion, I have 10x42s because that's what I like, but I think mostly 8x42s is what beginners use. But you can go test them out, and actually right now I'm not sure if you could, but yeah, there's definitely different price points, and there are a few that are, you know, a few $100s for a really good pair of binoculars.
Okay, fantastic. I've got a question here. I think it's in reference to the pesticides that you talked about at the beginning. And it says, is it safe to assume if I use a yard service in the city of Toronto that applies weed control, that that's safe for birds?
Ooh, I'm not sure about that question. I feel like it might differ depending on the company. You can probably ask the company and ask them, you know, have you thought about this being bird friendly or not? That's what I would suggest.
Okay, great. And I've got just a clarification on the binoculars. Did you say Vortex, F-O-R-T-E-X?
Vortex, V-O-R-T-E-X.
V-O-R.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Yeah, that's great. And then we've got a question here. Do you have suggestions for the best bird feed at a feeder?
Well, it depends what you're attracting, right? So certain seeds will attract certain, you know, goldfinches, and then peanuts will attract blue jays and other things. Suet will attract woodpeckers and nuthatches and things like that. So it all depends what you want to attract. If you want it all, then yeah, a good diverse bird feed is a good thing. But there is more resources on our website for that. So check our website out, and there might be more suggestions there under Feeder Watch.
Okay, great. And I've got one last question that says the eBird app doesn't have the same functionality as the website. Do you recommend using one or both?
It's all what you're comfortable with. You know, if you want to go into the field and you have a good memory and you can remember everything, or you like writing it down, then use the app on your computer. If you want to just get it done right away, the eBird app is good. It actually has a functionality now. You can put on your location settings and track where you walk. So it tracks everything. Basically fills out the amount of time you're birding because you press start and stop. It shows the path that you took, so it calculates the distance that you walked. So then you really only have to put like how many people are in your party, and you can go as you go. I find it really handy because if you see 10 tree swallows that flew over, and then in another 100 meters you see another 10, you can quickly add them up, and you don't have to kind of keep those numbers rolling in your head. So it all depends on what you feel comfortable with. If you're comfortable on your phone and you feel like you can do that, then go ahead. But it took me a while to get the eBird app down, because sometimes when I'm birding and you're learning so much, sometimes it's kind of like there's a lot going on, so you don't want to be on your phone. So it's all what you're comfortable with. Okay, great.
So those are all the questions, but Amanda, sincere thanks to you for the great presentation. I know we all learned a lot, and I think it's a great time to go birding right now, right? If you can get out and be safe and social distance and all those sorts of things. But thanks for the work that you do, and thanks for helping to protect birds. And I'm just grateful for your time today. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you everyone for listening and for joining on the webinar. I really appreciate the audience. So yeah, get out birding. And if you have any other questions, oh, I forgot to put my email here. I'll send out an email with all those links. And can you,
yeah, we can get it out to people, sure.
Okay, with links and my email, just in case people have questions.
All right, fantastic. All right, well, have a great day. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. Take care.